Amen. So we're there in Revelation chapter number 13. So this is a super important chapter in end times prophecy. We see kind of the unholy trinity here. We see the Antichrist, the rise to power here in Revelation 13. We see the false prophet, and of course we see the dragon who is leading those two, all right? So tonight, we're going to be back in the Clues and Milestones sermon series. We're going to be basing ourselves in Revelation 13, so keep your place there if you would. But I have a very specific topic that I want to talk about tonight, and it's something that maybe you will have interest in. It's probably kind of one of those things where you either be interested in it or not at all, and it may go down the lines of men versus women, whether they're interested in this or not. So the title of the sermon is Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, all right? And I'm going to focus mainly on Bitcoin tonight, and I want to look at a few different things. I know this is the reason that I want to preach about this tonight. You say, why would you preach on something that is just kind of some worldly thing? And I do believe that there is end times implications here, and I want to give you that perspective. But I also want to give you some perspective on biblical warnings on financial matters and things like that. I'm never going to be a financial advisor for you. That is not my role. But I want to make sure that as things come up in society and get more popular and more talked about, that you are biblically guided on that path. So tonight I want to answer basically 4 questions for you on the topic of Bitcoin. And I'm going to kind of veer off and talk about cryptocurrency in general and about the middle of the sermon, but I'm going to focus mainly on Bitcoin. So I first want to tell you, what it is. Then I want to talk about, its implications. Number 2, I'll give you its implications and my perspective on its implications to end times prophecy. I believe that it's a very valuable sign for us if we look at it the right way. And then I want to tell you, number 3, is it good or is it bad? All right, and I'll give you some perspective there. And then number 4, I want to answer for you the question of, is it something that you should be involved in or not? All right, and I'll kind of give you some biblical guidance on those answers to those questions. All right, so you're going to keep your place there in Revelation chapter number 13, and we'll get there in just a couple minutes. But let me just kind of give you, first of all, the breakdown of what it is. All right, what is Bitcoin? So first of all, Bitcoin is basically a network. It is a network, and a network of computers running a algorithm is what Bitcoin is. So if you see it in the news, there's no physical coins involved. It is just, and quite frankly, it is arguably, and I would agree with this, probably the most secure network in the world. So if you ever hear people say that Bitcoin is nothing, it's just fake, it's nothing, that's not actually true. It is actually a network of billions of dollars, I don't know how many billions at this point, of computer hardware running an algorithm out there that creates the Bitcoin network. So really, Bitcoin is a network of computers. It's extremely secure, and along the lines of a lot of people will say, well, quantum computing is going to come along and break Bitcoin or whatever. That whether quantum computing becomes a thing or not, it remains to be seen, first of all. But second of all, it's the most secure thing on the planet, so many things will be hacked and broken before this network and it will just be patched and whatever. So that's not really an issue, all right? But it's a network. It is a secure network, meaning you need the internet to access this network. It is rare. There's only to be ever 21 million Bitcoins. That's part of the code of Bitcoin, and that's one of the things that is, proponents of Bitcoin, who are kind of religious zealots at this point, by the way, but they will say that it's rare. Okay, that's what makes it, a specific top cryptocurrency. Okay, is that there will only be 21 million, much, the opposite of, our currency that we have, the dollar today, which there is just no end, right, to how many dollars will be out there because we just keep printing and making more money, making more dollars and putting them into circulation. All right, but the main thing about Bitcoin that you need to understand is that it is a secure network, it is a limited supply, but it is most importantly, and this is what people will tout the most, it is a trustless network. What does that mean? The network of running Bitcoin is trustless, meaning it does not need a third party to be involved in a transaction, meaning two people that want to transact can just transact directly to one another, and they do not need some third party. You say, what kind of third party? Well, like a bank would be a third party, a financial institution. If you buy a home, things like that, there's many different parties involved. There's a broker, there's a bank, there's a title company, there's all these different entities involved in that transaction. You say, why are there so many so many entities involved in, like, when you go and buy a home or take out a loan and take out a mortgage, for example? And the answer is because nobody trusts each other, all right? Nobody trusts each other, so you have all these other entities involved to make sure that nobody rips anyone off. You have the title company making sure that, you know, the person that says they own the home really does own the home, and there's no outstanding liens or anything else on the home. You have the real estate brokers on both sides. You have the banks on both sides. You have all these people involved just to make sure that, because nobody involved trusts each other, okay? So the unique thing about Bitcoin and this network is that it is a trustless network, meaning it's a computer code where everything is automatically, and I don't want to get into the details of it, but basically it is completely secure for me to transact with someone else or them to transact with me. It cannot be hacked, or it's not been hacked yet anyway, and it does not need a third party involved. All right. Now, you say, why is trust so important? I mean, think about, why Craigslist is so sketchy today. Craigslist is so sketchy because here you have two people, everybody looks at each other like, yeah, it is sketchy. But here's the thing, you have two people, you have somebody on Craigslist selling a car for $5,000, and that's supposed to be, so that's a transaction that's going to just take place between that person and me. But that person doesn't trust me, and I don't trust that person, and it's so sketchy because many times, people know, like, I'm selling a car for $5,000, come look at it. They know I'm going to be bringing $5,000 in cash to that transaction in that dark parking lot somewhere or wherever it is. And, it's like, that's why so many bad things have happened on websites like Craigslist. I remember Garrett was going to get some tools. He's like, found a really great deal on this specific tool, from this guy. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with you though. And it's some guy, selling tools out of his garage or whatever, it's like, it's sketchy. It's sketchy. Why? Because you can't trust anybody, because people will rip you off, people will steal from you, whatever. So this is a secure, trustless network that does not require a third party. Even eBay is safe because it has protection. eBay is that third party, and if somebody rips you off, eBay will reimburse you. There's some trust there. It's important to have that third party. But with Bitcoin, crypto, Bitcoin, it is a trustless network where you don't need that, all right? And it is completely safe in that way, all right? So that's what it is, okay? It's a network. It's not really turned out to be a currency because it just doesn't really have the capacity to handle thousands of transactions that need to happen every second in our world, but it is this network, okay? Now, let's go into 3 items here. Let's go into the remaining 3 questions, which is end times implications of Bitcoin. Is it good or bad? And what should I do? All right? Let's look at Revelation chapter number 13. Now that we have a general idea of what Bitcoin is, let's look at Revelation chapter number 13 and see if there is any end times implications that something like Bitcoin could have. All right? Look at Revelation chapter number 13 and verse number 15. So what do we see? We see the Antichrist rise to power. We see the false prophet. We see the dragon is involved, running the Antichrist. We see the abomination of desolation, which is the Antichrist himself, this world leader who's now, gotten global control. He's gotten global control, and he sets up an image of himself in the temple of God and demands that people worship that image, okay? That's what we call the abomination of desolation. I've done a whole sermon on that. And then after people worship the image, the Bible says that, the Christians are not going to worship the image, but then he causeth all. Look down at verse number 15. It says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. That's going to be, Christians are not going to worship the beast. But there's something that he implements that will, put pressure on those who do not conform to the worship of the Antichrist and his image. Look at verse 16. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And the Bible tells us in other places in the Bible, other places in Revelation, that no Christian, no saved person will take the mark of the beast, all right? And it says in verse 17, here's the consequences of not taking the mark in your right hand or in your forehead. It says that no man might buy or sell, save that he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So I preached 2 sermons that people, imply towards these verses, all right? So people imply, if you've ever heard people say, well, we're going to move to a cashless society. That's what the Bible says, all right? So I preached a sermon on that. And then another implication from these 2 verses, the mark of the beast, is that, we're going to move to some kind of one world currency, or, globalism is the sermon that I preached on that. So I preached a sermon on a cashless society, and I preached a sermon on globalism already. So you say, why? Why would people say that we're going to move to a cashless society and then we're going to move to some kind of global currency? Well, the answer is because you cannot control. This implies that this Antichrist and his government has complete control over who buys stuff and who sells stuff, right? You cannot control that if people have cash, right? Because cash, the government today hates cash transactions, right? Because cash transactions cannot be tracked. They cannot be controlled. Have you ever heard somebody say, well, oh yeah, that guy's working under the table. He's doing some side jobs and nobody here would do anything like that. But the point is, under the table work is cash work, right? Somebody's getting paid, under the table. That's why the government the government of the global Antichrist cannot have cash, because it can't be tracked, okay? And of course, the one world currency, implies that global government, that's that totalitarian global government that the Antichrist puts in place, that we see in, Daniel and Revelation 6 and all those different places in the Bible that I've preached on before, all right? Now, how does this apply, or how does this map onto this Bitcoin, this computer code that's running around, this network that we're hearing about? Well, first of all, if we just look at the cashless society and the global currency, Bitcoin is definitely global, all right? That's what they basically, it's a decentralized network. It's everywhere. The miners are everywhere. There's not one, big, thing of, Bitcoin mining, which that's how new Bitcoin is made, by the way. I didn't really explain that, but it's computers that crunch that code, that algorithm that basically process the transactions on the network. They're rewarded for running that code with actual Bitcoin itself, all right? So it's a global network for sure. It can be accessed by anyone with an internet connection. And let me just say this, there are peer-to-peer solutions for Bitcoin, meaning I could transact Bitcoin myself personally with some other individual. However, it is important to note that while it can be anonymous, most of it is not, all right? Most of it is not. The blockchain, which contains every single transaction that has ever been on the Bitcoin network, is visible to all. So unless someone is trying to transact anonymously on this network, it can be tracked because the ledger itself is public. It's secure, but it's public. And most people are on exchanges and things like this, doing things the legitimate way. So much of it can be seen, all right? It is not exactly as anonymous as a cash transaction. That's important to note, all right, when it comes to end times, application here. So in the case of a totalitarian government, which we know has to happen here, right? It says no man may buy or sell. That implies that government of the Antichrist has the power to stop all buying and selling. So in the case of a totalitarian government, a lot of the commerce on the network could be stopped. Okay? That's important to note. Everyone can see the transactions. In the one world government, if the one world government just cracked down on it, they stopped all the mining, they confiscated all the equipment, all this, it wouldn't stop it completely. I do not believe, and no one believes, and it's not true that they could stop it completely. I agree with that 100%, but they could crash the price to nearly zero. Because basically all the institutions, all the governments that are getting involved in it is why the price is going up. So that's an important thing for us to take, though. All right, that's an important clue for us when it comes to looking at end times prophecy. A rising price is driven by massive adoption of this technology, and that's an advantage for Christians to see, okay? That global power, that totalitarian government that has that desire to crack down on that does not exist today. All right, that does not exist today. But it's something to watch for, definitely, all right? And this is an interesting, so my point is, Bitcoin, I'm not saying it's the global currency of the end times, but what I'm saying is it's a super interesting indicator of which way we're moving, all right, as far as the global, it's a great end times clue is what I'm trying to say, all right? It could be and look, right now, as it's being adopted more and more globally, it's a freedom asset is the way people are looking at it, all right? It's people are looking at it, it's allowing people all over the world who don't, did you know that a quarter of the people in the world do not have access to a bank? Which is pretty crazy when you think about it. They have access to the internet, but they don't have any access to a bank. 24% of the adult population in the world is unbanked. But you think, well, that's, what do you need those evil bankers for? Well, I'm pretty sure that the lives of most Americans would be quite different if they did not have access to a bank. Many people wouldn't be driving cars. They wouldn't be living in homes. Things are simply too expensive to operate without access to a bank. Many people in the world, they can't buy property at all. They couldn't buy gold or silver. They couldn't buy any kind of asset. So this is kind of being looked at as a freedom asset for people who didn't normally have access to assets at all. All right? So look, that's if you choose to believe that it is an asset, and that's your choice. All right? And look, many very, very smart people do not believe that it is an asset. And I'm talking about people like Warren Buffett, people that are very smart financial people, Peter Schiff, somebody that I agree with a lot of the things that Peter Schiff says. I don't agree with everything that he says, but he's just like, there's no use case. He says there's no use case for it other than the fact that somebody else will pay more money for it, therefore it's worthless. Therefore, it's going to go to zero. He's a big gold and silver guy, right? So he's like, well, at least gold and silver, these are metals that have many different uses in the world. They have use cases, thus they have inherent value, all right? Look, both viewpoints have intellectual merit. And it has no bearing on anything in your Christian life on what side of that debate that you fall in, all right? But back to the end times prophecy. Number one, cashless society. This is moving the world into a cashless era. Just the technology itself, all right? We're moving that way. Global currency, it's kind of also moving it that way, but not in a way that really allows government control, all right? So the point on end times prophecy is this, if I can just sum it up, is the governments of the world, their attitude towards Bitcoin is a great indicator on where we're going in the world as far as more globalism or away from globalism. And today I'm telling you, this indicator shows us that we are moving away from globalism today in the world. And look, that's exactly what's happening. The world, as it sits today, look, some war could happen next week and that could all change. But the world as it is today is rejecting the globalism of the Western world. The push that the Western world was trying to push onto the globe, people are spitting it out. People are moving to at least regionalization, and, more nationalism is popping up in the world. All right, so the point is, Bitcoin, in my opinion, can be looked at, whether it's being adopted or rejected, can be looked at as kind of a global freedom index. All right, if the world starts rejecting it, it starts, Peter Schiff gets his dream come true, and it starts crashing down to zero or whatever, that is an indication that we could be moving towards more globalism and towards that more totalitarian, system that can get rid of these types of things that allow for just individual freedom. All right, so it's a good end times indicator either way. All right. Third question, is it good or is it bad? All right, is it good or is it bad? And I'm going to give you some perspective on Bitcoin, and I'm going to give you some perspective tonight on the overall cryptocurrency situation in the world. All right, Bitcoin, is it good or bad? Again, it depends on whether you think it is an asset or not. If you think it's an asset, it's good. If you think it's not an asset, it's bad. And everyone has to decide for themselves. That's what that comes down to. All right? Now, here's some crypto space warnings for you tonight. All right? Bitcoin is a known and proven thing. It's something that people are very familiar with. People know what it is, and they just have to decide whether they think it's an asset or not. All right? But much of the crypto space, other than that, there are thousands of cryptocurrencies out there. More and more are popping up every single day. And this is another main push and main reason that I'm preaching a sermon on this, because I want to give you some perspective on this tonight. This is no new thing. What do you mean? Well, cryptocurrency is new in the last 10 years. No, but what's happening and what it's being used for is no new thing at all. When I started in the workforce in 1999, it was right on the precipice of what people would call the dot-com crash. Okay, and what caused the dot-com crash was something called an IPO. All right, an IPO was an initial public offering. Okay, now what happened was in the 90s, in 1995 was kind of the birth, that was the real introduction on the scene of the internet itself, 1995. That's when I graduated high school. So right when I was in college, everyone was just discovering the internet. Everyone's discovering, what is this about? Look, it changed everyone's lives. All kinds of businesses were popping up. This is where Amazon started. This is where Facebook started. This is where MySpace started. All these different things that maybe you haven't even heard of before. But there was tons of startup companies that just popped up out of nowhere and just started advertising all the new ideas that they had for the internet, for different chip designs and all these different things. I actually worked for one of those companies for about 3 years. And let me tell you something, it was hard to know, and then what would happen is these companies would get all kinds of venture capital from investors because they had this great idea and they'd really pitch this idea that sounded beautiful. And then they would, do an initial public offering on the stock market. They would take their stock from private to publicly listed on the stock exchange, and then everyone would just become millionaires. Everyone that worked at the whole company. Like when I started at the startup company that I worked for in 2001, the owner of the company told me, you will be a multimillionaire before you're 30. No lie. That's the kind of environment that it was back then. All right? But many of these private companies, they were just scams. They really had no product. They really had no profit. Many of them that actually went public, they didn't have any profit at all. I worked for a startup company. Let me tell you something. I was one of the top engineers at that company, and I wasn't even sure if what we were doing actually worked. That's how hard it is to understand the technology and what's going to make it and what's not. But the point is, all kinds of hype to bring in all kinds of money, and then nothing works, and the company closes its doors, but somehow the money all disappeared. Somebody got all those millions of dollars. A lot of them were just straight up scams. And that is exactly what is happening with much of the crypto space today. People are just creating new coins every single day, and then, oh, it's a special project. And instead of IPOs, they're calling it ICOs, initial coin offerings. So what they do is they raise all kinds of money, and they get all kinds of celebrities to come on and endorse this wonderful project, and all kinds of, social media and all this stuff. And people but the difference today is it's not venture capital people, it's retail investors that are going and spending thousands of dollars of their own money to buy all these initial coin offerings, and then all of a sudden it just goes to zero and all the money's gone. And everyone, it's the same exact thing has happened in the 1990s. Okay, it's just big pump and dump schemes. All right, so the point is there's much danger in the crypto space. All right. Now, what does the Bible say about this? Turn to Ecclesiastes chapter number 11. Let me give you a couple Bible philosophies here that'll protect you from these types of things, okay? Now, Ecclesiastes chapter number 11. Look, what should you do, right? What should you do? Is it good or bad? If you think Bitcoin's an asset, it's good. If you don't think it's an asset, it's bad, okay? Look, you're correct. Either way is intellectually supported, all right? So the Bible's not going to answer that question for you, all right? But just investment strategy in general, the Bible does have some things to say, all right? Go to Ecclesiastes chapter number 11, because look, folks, if you live right and you do what the Bible says and you work hard every day, and, I have like the 80% rule I've mentioned before, right? What's the 80% rule? You should go out, you should work hard, you should live on 80%. Okay, you should live on 80%. Well, what about the other 20%? You should give 10% to the Lord, and you should save 10%. Now, look, if you can live on 70%, that's even better. If you can live on 60%, that's even better. But you should start out, you should be living on your budget month to month should be 80% of what you make. And you should have some emergency fund in that 80%. All right, that way, you're going to give 10% to the Lord, don't rob God, and you're going to save 10% of your money. So you're going to have some savings. If you do things the right way, according to the Bible, you're going to have some savings. You have to put it somewhere. And look, I wouldn't put it in cash in your mattress, because I can guarantee you one thing, the government's not going to stop devaluing your money. All right? So you have to put it in some sort of investment. But the Bible does give us some ideas here. Look at Ecclesiastes 11. Look at verse number 1. The Bible says, "Cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. Give a portion to 7 and also 8, for thou knowest not what evil shall be upon the earth." You know what the Bible is telling you here? The Bible is telling you to not put it all in one spot. The Bible is saying, don't just go put all, literally, this is how, the proverb says, don't put your eggs all in one basket. That's not a proverb, but that's just the saying says, all right? Look at verse number 3. "If the clouds be full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. And if the tree fall towards the south or towards the north, in the place where the tree falleth, there it shall be." You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what you don't know, is what the Bible is saying. So don't put it all in one spot. Wherever you decide to take your 10% and invest it into, whether that be, whatever, there's so many different things today, don't put it all in one spot. That's what the Bible is saying. Because you don't know where a tree is going to fall. You don't know where, it's going to rain. You don't know where it's going to hail. My grandpa used to always say, I always had, half in crops and half in cattle. And when the crops were up, the cattle was down. And when the cattle were up, the crops were down. What was he doing? He was diversifying. He was not putting all his eggs in one basket. Turn to Proverbs chapter 28. So whatever you do, when you work hard and you get some savings, because look, folks, I don't know, if you are working hard, you are learning, you are getting skills, you're taking those tests, you're getting those certifications, you're doing all those things, you're going to have a couple nickels to rub together at some point in this country. All right? It is possible today to make it. So don't put your eggs all in one basket. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, I mean, this is basically saying, like, if you decide, hey, I think Bitcoin is good, I think it is an asset, don't put all your money there. Because of all the assets that you could invest in, it's going to be one of the most volatile. I do feel comfortable saying that. All right? So, meaning it might have, the most upside, but it also has the most downside. Okay? So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Look at Proverbs chapter number 28. In Proverbs chapter number 28, it kind of applies more to the crypto space in general. Knowing that it's filled with scams, first of all right, and it's just filled with people that are just trying to rip you off, look at Proverbs chapter 28. Because one of the things about Bitcoin and crypto in general that like freedom and libertarian people will, tout is that it's not very regulated, if at all. But that's what you have to understand. No one's there to protect you either. When someone takes it all from you, don't go crying to whoever, because that's it. You're done. You just lost. Okay? Look at Proverbs 28 and verse number 22. So the first biblical financial guidance is don't put your eggs in the same basket. All right? And the second one is this, and I've said this many times to many of you, don't trade. Look at Proverbs 28, verse number 22. Because traders, people that are trading or just trying to jump into some asset and make a bunch of money real quick, you know what they do? They have the haste to be rich. Proverbs 28:22 tells you how this will end. How could the Bible tell me how an investment is going to end? Because the Bible is written by God. That's how. Look at Proverbs 28:22. He that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye, and consider not that poverty shall come upon him. If you go out and decide that you're going to trade in cryptocurrency, let me just foresee your future from the Bible for you. You are going to be broke. You are going to lose everything. It's the same reason that you should not gamble and play the lottery, because you'll lose it all. I remember, and I've told some of you this story, but I remember I had a buddy when I was like 6 months out of college into the workforce, and I had a buddy who was into like watching these day trading, websites. I don't even know if they still, I'm sure they still do that, right? But the point is, he's like, hey, I'm watching these websites and they're picking these penny stocks, and like, I'm getting in on this. He's going to take a few $1,000s and he's going to jump into this, and he's like, man, they just picks this stock and every day it goes up just like they say it's going to, and I'm going to do it. It's a sure thing. And I went and I just kind of did 8 minutes of research, and realized, and here's another thing, I realized by just doing some research that 98+% of these day traders are losing. And I remember just thinking he's just gambling is what he's doing. And within 2 or 3 days, all of his money was gone. And look, he got scammed just like the crypto space, just like many of these. Look, this stock market does the same thing. I'm not saying you should never invest in the stock market, but you should not be trading. Trading on the stock market, trying to day trade, is like going to a shooting competition against a Delta Force sniper. That's what it is. You're taking your rifle that you got at Sportsman's Warehouse for $200 and you're going with a $50 scope, and you're going to go and compete against a Delta Force sniper. But in this space, it's the sniper's encouraging you. He's like, come on, you can win. You can beat me. And you're like, yeah, I can. And then you lose everything. That's exactly what is happening. Literally, people do this. They go on like these media personalities. They go on like Fox Business or something. They go and they short a stock, meaning they make money if the stock goes down, and then they'll go on some media rampage just trashing that stock. And then the farmer sitting in his living room on Saturday morning is like, that stock's no good, and he sells it. And then all the retail investors sell their stock at the top. It drops through the bottom because everybody's selling, because he literally told them to sell, and they make a ton of money. Like, how is this legal? It shouldn't be legal. See 2007, 2008. Don't get me started on that. But people get away with this stuff. These people are trained to do this. They do it full time. And ultimately, that was the thing that made me not follow that guy. It's what are the odds that me sitting here doing my job and doing this part time, I'm going to be better than somebody that this is all they do. And they've been doing it for 30 years. And they have the best tools. And they have faster computers. And they have level 3 and 4 trading and whatever. And they could just do things 10 times faster than I can do things. What are the odds that I could win that game? 0. It's a scam, all right? So look, crypto over the years has been literally the exact same model. Many of these cryptocurrencies, you have media figures, you have celebrities pushing all these. How many celebrities have been in trouble for pushing these things that just turn out to be complete scams? You're but celebrities, they're so nice. They're such nice people with such high moral values. But here's the thing. All these celebrities that are pushing these different projects on people, what they're doing is they're not making money on that project. They're being paid a fee to advertise that thing. They make their money whether you lose all yours or not. All right? So look, you shouldn't hasten to be rich. That's what the Bible is saying. If you hasten to be rich, these people are going to get you. You should make your money by working. You're I want to make more money. Go work harder. I want to make more. Go learn more skills. Go take that test. Go study that trade. Go become that cunning man. Become the expert in whatever it is that you have decided to pursue in your life. That's how you make money. You're going to have some savings. You want to invest that. You want to park it somewhere safe. And yeah, if it grows a little bit, that's great. But that's not how you should want to make your money. The Bible says that you should make your money by working by the sweat of your face. Your income should be working for just gain. Not trying to play some lotto, because look, this is the same thing with Andrew Tate. It's all the same game. All these guys on YouTube that have, that have all this, trading advice, and they'll show you how to read the charts and all this stuff. They're not making their money by trading. You know how they're making their money? By getting you to subscribe to their Discord or sign up for their class or whatever. Joke's on you. Because they know that going out and trading and doing all that stuff, they're going to lose too. It's a casino, all right? People literally lose everything. I have known people in my life that have lost millions of dollars, have lost more money than I will ever see in this kind of game, this kind of scam, all right? So that's why I think it's important that I bring it up and preach this to you so you don't fall into this, all right? Do not hasten to be rich, or you will be broke. Work hard. If you decide Bitcoin's an asset, maybe you can put a little bit over there and say, I think it's an asset. And I'll be like, good job, good for you. And then somebody next to you is like, I don't think it's an asset. Good job, good for you. That's your own personal decision. And if you put some long-term savings in something and just let it sit there and don't have to watch it every single day, that's another thing. That's another good indication. If you are investing in something that you're checking the price of every hour, that's not something that you should invest in. You should park your money somewhere that you feel it's safe. Maybe you can throw some in higher risk things here and there if you want, but just understand if you put it into those more volatile things, it could just go to zero. And as long as you don't put all your eggs there, if you lose an egg, no big deal, right? But don't fall into this hasten to be rich. I'm going to get rich off this stuff. You're going to lose. You're going to make foolish decisions. And that's what people that are making up these scams. Look, this is the same exact scam that I've seen for 25 years. It's just got more tech to it. That's all. But the Bible is so true that there's no new thing under the sun. All right? So, again, should I buy Bitcoin? Is it an asset or not? That's all you need to ask yourself. And then don't put all your eggs there. All right? And if you're you bought enough Bitcoin or enough asset of any kind and you're just can't keep looking at the price, you should probably invest in something else that's not going to steal your heart away from that thing. All right? So, final note. I'm almost done here. the whole point, and this is the most interesting thing to me personally about Bitcoin especially, and I don't want you to lose this in the mix of this sermon, but the whole point of clues and milestones is that Christians should have an advantage. Why? Because we know how it ends. Like, we don't know exactly where on the timeline we are right now, but there will be clues, and then there will be milestones where we will know where we're at on that timeline. But Bitcoin might be the clue that tells us which direction we're heading as far as towards globalism or away from globalism. And that's an important thing. And that's pretty cool if you have an indicator, you have a clue, from a single number, from a single trend line, Bitcoin rising, it's getting more and more adopted. It means more and more individual freedom is popping up around the world. That's what that means. But government's cracking down on it, institutions dropping it because, governments are making it illegal, things like that. Not only will that crash the price, but more importantly to us, it's an indicator that governments are getting more totalitarian, and it's moving more towards that global totalitarian system that literally has to exist for Revelation 13 to happen. Okay? So it's a neat indicator. All right? And look, here's another off-the-wall thought about it. I don't know if I believe this, but just something I thought about. Like, maybe it's a Trojan horse. Maybe it's just, it's something that's put out there where people put all their money into this one thing, and the world's governments outlaw it, it goes to zero, and then people own nothing. Maybe that's possible. Look, that won't happen overnight, but the opposite is happening right now. All right? The opposite is happening right now. The world right now is rejecting globalism, and that is reflected in Bitcoin and the people that are adopting it. All right? Because look, in order for you to not be able to transact with anyone, you have to own nothing. I mean, in order for you, just think about that for a second. That's another indicator, just aside from Bitcoin. We do kind of see that push, right? Where it's like, there is kind of an agenda to try to get you to not own anything. And if I own any assets, I can trade them with, Brother Trevor, and we could just, even amongst the church, we could transact. We could buy and sell from each other. But if nobody owns anything, that's a problem, right? So look, either way, we know the direction things have to go for the end times to begin to play out. Whatever your opinion is of crypto, I just implore you to follow biblical financial guidance so you don't get in any kind of trouble with these things. And then look, we just look at everything in the light of the Bible, right? We're more informed because we know the Bible. We're more informed because we have this in front of us. So beware of scams and greed. There's no new thing, right? Working and saving. That's how, you end up not in debt and not poor, all right? By working and saving, not investing in, the billionth token that someone invented yesterday, all right? That's going to change the world or whatever, all right? And, Bitcoin in general is just a great end times clue. So some financial guidance and just looking at Bitcoin and what happens with it, applying that to the end times, the trends that we see there, all right? That's the point of the sermon. Let's bow our heads and have a word of prayer.